This interview is being conducted with Lance Corporal David J. Jolly, 2478055. He's with Charlie Company, 1st Recon Battalion, 1st Marine Division. Lance Corporal Jolly is a recon scout. The interviewer is PFC Martinez, FC 2530561, member 1st Marine Division Historical Team. Location of the interview is Command Post Charlie Company, Da Nang, TAOR, Quang Nam Province, Republic of Vietnam. Date of interview is 4 September 1969. Subject and security classification of interview is ground attack, and security classification is secret till downgraded by higher authorities. Lance Corporal Jolly, could you tell me what you saw and did on O.P. Bana from 4 August 1969 till 12 August 1969?
Well, it started about on August 11th, about 3:30 in the afternoon, when Sergeant Brunn came into the hotel and said that he thought he saw a gook outside. He wasn't sure. We just saw something moving out there. So Corporal Flynn, myself, Lance Corporal Whitmire, Lance Corporal Christensen, PFC Cherry, ran just a reconnaissance patrol in the area that we saw the gook. This area was on a little sort of a hill to our northwest. We didn't see anything out there. We saw a couple of footprints. As I say, we didn't see anything, but we did see footprints and heard a little noise to our west down in a deep draw. We came back in and just resumed our normal activities that day, except we put a little more ammunition and a few extra frags out on some of the bunkers. Well, I'd just gotten off watch at 1 o'clock in the morning. It'd be on the 12th of August, and I was laying in my rack just getting ready to go to sleep when Corporal Christian comes in and says, we've got some NVA in the wire. Well, I got up and just tied the ends of my boots, grabbed my rifle, my cartridge belt, and threw them in the trench line, which was to the sort of east of my bunker. My bunker was the last bunker on the LZ. At this time, Lance Corporal Christensen and Whitmire were running across the LZ to their bunker, which was about 30 meters away. They come back, and as Chris was coming back, why, he opened fire on a gook, which had popped his head up from inside our wire. At that time, I saw 2 more gooks just on the outside over the rim of the wire. Chris opened fire on him, and Whitmire threw a frag down in his immediate vicinity. At that time, it was about 1:05 a.m., and all of a sudden, just the whole world blew up. On the other side of the hotel, which was the southeastern end, we started taking incoming mortar rounds and RPG rounds. We had the mortar set up for the LZ, which we considered was the most dangerous place because of the flat ground and higher elevations all around. But the northeast end, there was another knoll which was above the hotel grounds. We started taking the RPGs and mortars from this area right here. For, I guess, 15 minutes, we heard nothing but incoming rounds and all just explosions everywhere. I heard Corporal Flynn started yelling at the mortar for him to, he was adjusting the mortar fire, which there was Staff Sergeant Shoemaker in there, and Sergeant Brunn were the ones in the mortar pit firing out the rounds. Every time they fired a mortar round, 2 incoming RPGs had come in on them. And we fought, I don't know, I guess time went so quickly, I guess for maybe 45, 50 minutes. and finally they'd been pushed back to just in front of the LZ. And we could see the gooks coming over the wall from where we were because there was illumination from way down an end wall, which we could just barely see. So they kept dropping back, and I didn't know anything about the wounded until Staff Sergeant Shoemaker yelled down, asked me to if the LZ was clear, and we had 4 people on the LZ. We had 4 people all around the LZ, and we considered it clear. There was one bunker, which the gooks had been in, but we'd got them out of there with machine gun and fire and hand grenades. So the rest of the people dropped on back to our position, which is the very, very northwestern end of the LZ. We held a trench line I imagine was about 10 meters long and just barely wide enough so you could get down into the thing. It was about knee deep. And from there, we didn't have any other place to go because we had a lot of strands of wire to our back, and we knew that there were gooks behind us because we'd seen them before, and they were up in front of us now. There was a sandbag wall in between the hotel and the LZ, and the gooks, we could see them coming from there. I was firing my rifle quite a bit, myself and Staff Sergeant Shoemaker, because I had a good vantage point from where I was. I could see them pop their heads up and sticking around. We finally got Spooky on station about 45 minutes after we called for him. It took quite a long time, it seemed like. And had a slight cloud cover, not really too much. We had nothing to mark our target with, though. And so we were going to try to use the machine gun, which we had set up on my bunker, to mark the hotel so that Spooky could start firing down on it. We fired, Sergeant Shoemaker fired about 8 rounds and then slacked up, and Spooky didn't see us. And so we fired another burst. At the very end of his last burst, why RPG came in right towards the machine gun. It hit about 5 feet from myself and Sergeant Shoemaker and wounded PSC Cherry. Got him, gave him face and hand wounds. Nothing real serious. He's back with us. At this time, we feel like we couldn't fire the machine gun unless it would be a last-ditch effort to. They were starting to come across the LZ, which they never did, thank God. The first Spooky never was able to fire. He dropped one flare, which gave us quite a bit of illumination, and we could see all the gooks that were in the hotel on top of it, behind the sandbag walls. We saw some of them creeping along the sides, and I got off a few shots at them, myself and Lance Corporal Weber. We didn't know how much damage we'd done to them or anything like that, but we knew that there were quite a few of them out there. At this time, another Spooky came on station, and he finally saw the hotel and was able to fire him. He did an outstanding job on it. I believe that this and the fact that Private... Okay. We had a few more RPG rounds come flying over our heads, and then Private Thomas was able to draw a bead on the guy with the RPG and got him, which probably saved our lives right there. We spent the rest of the night trying to get Spooky on station and getting him work out on the hotel. We had one called a Shadow 47, and he scared us more than I know he scared the goose, because he was putting rounds right in our trench line. PSC Cherry was almost hit again when a round went through his trouser leg. Well, later on that night, he just kept on going and going, and the gooks didn't bother us too much that night. Much more after that. So when daylight came, why, we got the word from our 3 shop that we had to have the hotel secured before we could bring in a reactionary force to get us out or get more people on the hill. We knew that this was just about impossible. Myself, Corporal Flynn, and Lance Corporal Christensen advanced from the LZ to the far bunker. And from this position, we had a good view of the hotel. And from the hotel, why, I could see, I counted at one time 6 of them just standing in a window, and there were 5 on the outside towards the other end of the hotel just standing around doing nothing. I guess just waiting. I never don't know what they were doing. We had 2 of them in the mortar pit, and there was 1 or 2 up on top of the hotel. We stayed there, about 30 or 40 minutes, and I remember I used up about 6 magazines just sniping at them. I got a couple of them, and I know Corporal Flynn got one. We were just trying to draw a bead on them and keep them down or keep them from coming over us. We didn't know what they were going to do. I couldn't believe it. I don't really think I've ever seen that many gooks in one place at one time, because they just kept walking in and out of the hotel. They didn't really care. They'd stand out in the middle of the doorway in front of the windows, no cover, no nothing, and they knew I was out there. And the funny thing is, they never did fire at us. They never fired their AKs at us. They fired RPGs, and they flew Chi-Coms and stuff like that, but never, I can't really remember hearing more than 2 or 3 shots of AK fire. And I know that the ones we found on the LZ, their weapons were still on safe. So they had to be messed up in the mine somewhere. Well, Corporal Flynn and myself, with Kristen providing rear security, we stayed out there for about 30 or 40 minutes, as I say, just firing at them. We yelled back to Staff Sergeant Shoemaker and told them it would be impossible to take the hotel because there were just too many of them, which there were. They had better fortifications there than we could have brought on. Plus that, we figured they still had some RPGs. So we waited there till the AO got on station, and then the jets came around. Well, we were still there when the jets made their first run. The first run came right over our heads, and it looked just like they were going to hit us, but they missed a hill on all their runs altogether. The first flight did. Well, after that, we dropped back to our original position at the far end of the LZ, into the trench line. From there, we were able to observe the other airstrikes. And the second flight was tremendous. They were just really great. They did quite a bit of damage on the hotel itself. And from this position, they started taking machine gun fire and automatic weapons fire from the southeastern end of the LZ, southeastern end of the hill, which would be on the hotel side of it. And the AO, well, every time that the jets would come down, why, they'd take all kinds of fire. We can hear this. And then then the AO started going down first with a jet right on his tail, and the AO would take fire, and the jet would come in and just rack up on them. Just beautiful. We were so happy to see these people. And they did quite a bit of a job back over there on the knoll to the southeastern end, where the large weapons were coming from. We heard over the air, the AO told us that there were 3 50 cal positions set up that he had spotted. So they were pretty well set in. After they run buku more airstrikes and everything else out that area, then they started working on the hotel again, and I guess it was about 11 o'clock. It was in between 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock. I can't exactly remember when. I didn't have my watch on. that we started to advance back on the hotel again. Myself was point with Christensen after me, and came Corporal Flynn. And we walked. First we covered the complete LZ. We saw it. There were 2 dead gooks on the LZ itself, inside of our wire, and there was one off the side of the LZ, outside of our wire, that I could remember. We covered the holes and all the area right in there. We had a bomb crater right in the middle of our LZ where one of the bombs had missed us by about 20 meters and the hotel by about 100. It is sort of shaky, to say the least. Well, we continued advancing on the hotel. About this time, on my sort of right flank and backside was Lance Corporal Whitmire. He opened up on a gook which looked like he was still alive or something like that. But he had his rifle at the ready, it seemed like. He didn't know at the time. The guy was already dead. He scared the hell out of us. We continued, and the whole place had been just shattered by the finish of all the airstrikes and everything like that. I believe the total number was 13 airstrikes that they ran on it. This is, I'm not exactly sure, but this is what somebody told me that we counted. And we continued advancing on it. We were about 3/4 of the way, almost to the hotel, when the radio man, which was Lance Corporal Metz, who is now back in the world, yelled to us and said that the AO had another flight of fixed wing coming in on us, so we had to drop back again and go back, and the AO worked out again on the hotel the last time of that day. The AO stayed on station, I believe, for quite a long time after the airstrikes were over with, because at this time I don't believe we had too good of comm with anyone but him. And I know our radio was getting a little weak because it'd been used quite a bit. So we finally got up to the hotel, or what was left of the hotel, and we could see inside. We could see bodies of dead gooks and things like that. It seems funny to me that the airstrikes got them all, because I don't believe I'd been staying in that hotel if they knew the bombs were coming in on them. We advanced all the way across the hotel, checking everything. The bunker, the only bunker still standing was the ammo bunker, which was really surprising. And it seems like it had been booby-trapped with a frag, which had a can on it, and all I had to do was pick up the can and the frag would slide out, and a few other little things that I don't know, somebody just mentioned in there. Somebody who walked in just real quick mentioned. We didn't pick up anything or bother anything. There were just all kinds of RPG rounds laying around. A brand new launcher was laying around. I myself picked up an AK-47, and so did a couple of other people of my team. We picked up, well, I know 3 AKs and just all kinds of magazines and gear, packs. It was just, these people were ready for us. I believe total count on the RPGs was around 25, just laying around unused. You could even see the new bags which they were brought into. Went all the way down to the end of where the hotel used to be, and the far end where the other bunker was on the northeast side, and I ran across Lance Corporal Humble's body there. Looked like he had been in no pain at all when he died, so it made us feel a little bit good. We continued to secure the area, and we were told to drop back to our position, and the reactionary force, as soon as we had the hotel, would be on the way. So we called up to the 3 shop down here and at First Recon and told them we had the hotel secure. We took a little fire when the birds came over the first time. There was a little fire from the knoll and down in the valleys to the south of us. It didn't seem to bother them too much. Myself and Corporal Flynn and I believe Lance Corporal Galligan carried Lance Corporal Humble's body back to our position. I never did say anything about the wounded men because I didn't really see them get wounded. All I know is when they were brought back, they were in serious condition. Sergeant Brunn and myself and one other man, I forget who it was, tried to stop the bleeding. We just didn't have enough dressings or anything at all to really cover all the wounds that they had been inflicted. They were in real serious shape and going into shock. We were told that our medevac birds had been diverted. We had to wait because some other unit, a grunt unit, had gotten in contact and were pretty seriously hit. And we didn't like this at all because there was only 14 of us in all, and Poo-Koo Goops. The grunts had a whole company. We waited approximately 2.5 to 3 hours after we took the hotel back for our birds. And they finally came, I guess. It just seems like eternity as hell, you know. We loaded up our wounded and everything like that, and as we were taking off, the birds flew over sort of to a southwesterly direction and were taking 50 cal fire. One of the rounds went through the hull of the bird. Gooks just didn't want to give up, I guess. I don't know what their story was, their bag. They must have been high on dope or something. We continued, we took the bodies back near Harkat. The next night that night I learned that Banah had been hit again by mortars and RPGs, but no ground attack. I know the people up there were really scared because I know how scared I was.
Lance Corporal Jolly, do you have any lessons learned on this OP?
Yes, I got one very important lesson that I've learned. That's the fact that we never did see them come up. We didn't hear them or anything. They didn't give away their position until the very last minute. The one gook on the LZ that sort of triggered the whole thing off, why, we didn't see him until he was inside of our wire, and we had 8 and 9 strands of concertina wire, tanglefoot, everything. It was surprising to us because, you know, nobody can get through concertina wire. That's the way I looked at it until then. But they've got to be the sneakiest creatures on earth. Somehow or another, he did it without making a noise. We even had bits of trash and cans and stuff like this that no human being could walk past. He had to fly over it. That was the only possible way. I have one more comment to make, and that is about being resupplied. We went up there, and it seems like the team that had left it before us sort of sent in a faulty ammo report. And we thought that they had a lot of stuff, and we didn't take a lot of stuff up with us. And Staff Sergeant Shoemaker called back down to our 3 shop and asked for another resupply of some more ammo and some other things like this. Like, I think we only had 18 frags on the whole hill, and this was between all of us. We didn't get this resupply. We didn't get anything up there, matter of fact, at all. It was hard for us really to get support up there for just us, just to get support when we needed it. This Banah was out of arty illumination range. The only thing that could hit it was 175s, and I believe that's stressing them at their maximum range, which they're highly inaccurate at that, I believe. So the hill itself was very undefenseless. Later on I've learned that possibly grunt companies have been kicked off that place. This is from someone inside our company that was with the grunts. So I don't think that anyone should ever put a team back on that position without quite a few men.
Thank you. This concludes our interview with Lance Corporal Jolly. This interview is being conducted with Lance Corporal Albert G. Weber, 2381567. Lance Corporal Weber is with C Company, 1st Recon Battalion, 1st Marine Division. Lance Corporal Weber is a recon scout. The interviewer is PFC Martinez, FC 2530561. Member, 1st Marine Division, Historical Team. Location of the interview is Command Post C Company, Da Nang, TAOR, Quang Nam Province, Republic of Vietnam. The date of the interview is 4 September 1969. Subject and security classification of interview is ground attack on OP Bana, and security classification is secret till downgraded by higher authorities. Lance Corporal Weber, could you tell me what you saw and did at OP Bana from 4 August 1969 till 12 August 1969?
On 4 August 1969, we were inserted on top of OP Bana on Hill 1497, approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We were inserted by CH-46 helicopters, and during the time we were up there, for the first 7 days it was real quiet. We didn't see anything, didn't see any movement, and on the afternoon of the 11th of August, one of our sergeants up there said he saw something approximately 2:30 in the afternoon. Well, at first we didn't believe him, but to make security, we decided we'd go out and check. Sergeant Brunn went out there, we went out there, and we opened up with small arms in the general vicinity where we seen the enemy, and we ran a 6-man patrol out there. The 6-man patrol, they heard a lot of movement, but they didn't see anything. So we didn't think too much of it, because Hill Bana was supposed to be a fairly secure area. So after the patrol, we decided we'd make security safer anyway. So that afternoon on the bunkers, we decided we'd put a little extra ordnance just in case, and we set up the mortar with Willie Peter HE and illumination all ready to fire, and we doubled the watch that night. Well, everything was quiet after that, and I stood radio watch in the comm bunker from 7 in the evening till 1 o'clock at night, and I had just gotten off watch at 1 p.m. on the morning of the 12th, and I had just laid down for 5 minutes after my watch, and a fragmentation grenade went off. So I decided I'd go outside and check on it. I went down to the LZ and asked what happened, and they said they saw an enemy in the wire. So I grabbed my rifle and my cartridge belt. I went back to the hotel where Staff Sergeant Shoemaker, who was in charge of the hill, was, and I told him about it, and at the time he didn't think there was really that much involved. He thought maybe we were just hearing things. But within 10 seconds after he said that, first RPGs started coming in. RPGs came in from the southeast, and it was like automatic rifle fire. They were coming in one after another, and everybody got under cover right away. We got everybody out, and well, everybody got out into the trenches. Everyone was alerted, and the RPGs kept coming in. Well, I was a security for Staff Sergeant Shoemaker and Sergeant Brunn at the mortar pit at the time, and all of a sudden the word came down from the front trench line to our south saying that Ray Humble was killed. And so there was a man next to him, Lance Corporal Williams, who went to check on Humble, and while doing so he was hit himself. So we got the word back to the mortar pit that we had one person wounded at the time and one killed. So me and Lance Corporal Allen, we went into the comm bunker to get the Unit 1. While we were in there, the RPGs kept coming in constantly. We got to Unit 1. Lance Corporal Allen ran out there, ran through a barrage of RPGs, and he got to Lance Corporal Williams, but while doing so, he got wounded. So at the time, we had 2 wounded and 1 killed. Well, Staff Sergeant Shoemaker and Sergeant Brunn were in the mortar pit, and we had to keep suppressing the fire out there. So we had about 4 other people out there in the trench, and we opened up with a mortar, and Corporal Flynn was standing on the bunker directing the fire, and Private Thomas was standing on the bunker with the 79 trying to keep the enemy from shooting as many RPGs as possible. But every time he'd shoot a 79 round, they'd shoot an RPG, so it was pretty dangerous. Well, eventually, the Gooks, the enemy, they popped a red pop-up and 2 green ones, which kind of shook us up a little because we expected something then. Well, right after they did this, Corporal Flynn and Private Thomas, they heard all kinds of voices and movement right below the trench line. And by that time, the enemy had been so close, they were throwing Chi-Coms over, and they were still shooting RPGs, and there was no way you could stop them. When we got up there, there were hardly any fragmentation grenades at all, and we couldn't get very many to take up there. So the word was to pull back. So we all pulled back to the mortar pit, which was at the end of the hotel, and we set up a security. And Lance Corporal Allen, Lance Corporal Williams, they made it back to the mortar pit by themselves, although seriously wounded. But we couldn't get Lance Corporal Humble's body at the time because there were just too many enemy coming all through the wire. So in the meantime, we had been calling for Spooky constantly, and they kept telling us he was on the way, but he never came. And we kept calling up for him and calling up for him, and they kept postponing it and postponing it. Well, finally we were between the hotel and the LZ, and the enemy had gotten into the hotel. Now, once the enemy had gotten into the hotel, there was really nothing much you could do. So we kept the security as long as we could, and there were too many of them, so we had to pull all the way back to the LZ. Staff Sergeant Shoemaker was giving orders, running around while under fire, real calm, telling everybody what position, defensive positions. Did an outstanding job, and we finally pulled back halfway, and then we finally got all the wounded back. We got them into the trench line. By this time, the enemy had been all over the hill, and the trench line was maybe 25 meters long, if that long, and we had everybody in there, including the wounded, which is all total approximately 17 people. And the enemy kept coming close, and they got to a position about 40 meters away from us, to our direct front, to the south, and they were taking almost point-blank range fire with a RPG. Now, Private Thomas, he got up with a 79, he knocked out that RPG position, which probably would have got a lot of us. And we finally got the word that Spooky was on the way out. Well, we finally got the word that Spooky was on its way out, and he said he'd be there in 3-4 minutes. So we kept putting out fire as much as possible to keep the enemy from overrunning our position completely. And about that time, Shadow 47 showed up, and he flew around for approximately 15 minutes. It was a pretty bad night out. Fog was rolling in, and he had trouble seeing, and he flew around for about 15 minutes, couldn't put out any fire because he couldn't see too much, and then for no reason at all, he told no one, didn't let anybody know. Shadow 47 took off and left us there by ourselves. So that shook us up pretty bad. We were pretty low on ammunition. We were all crowded in that little trench. We had several wounded, and by that time we had gotten another wounded. PFC Cherry got hit with an RPG, fragmentation, while he was right next to the M60 machine gun. So we had 3 wounded, and things were looking pretty bad. So we kept calling up and asking for a Spooky. Finally, they got another Spooky out there, and the enemy that was outside of the hotel, they were moving closer. So this Spooky kept dropping flares, and we didn't have anything to mark our position with, which made it real difficult for the Spooky because the strobe lights were in the bunkers. A lot of us didn't have time to get all our gear. So we just prayed that Spooky would know where to shoot. So when he came, he put out some fire, beautiful fire. He covered the whole area, got the hotel, got the area in front of us, did an outstanding job. Well, finally he ran out of flares, but he stayed around, which was a good thing, because even though Spooky didn't fire, he stayed around and kept the enemy staying close, staying hidden, which helped us a great deal. And he stayed out there until another Spooky got to us. Now the other Spooky that came to us is called sign was Shadow 47, which was the first plane that was out there. Now this time when he came, he only shot 1 burst, which wasn't good at all. He put it in the trench with us. Now I think that if they shoot, they ought to know what they're shooting at. And he left, but he didn't leave until another Spooky came out there. And another Spooky come out, and they were flying around. The enemy wasn't coming closer because Spooky was keeping them down. If they'd have stood up, So finally, daybreak was slowly coming, and Spooky was still flying around. He said he wouldn't leave until we got an AO out there. Well, finally, we got an AO out there in the morning, and all that time at night we were calling in for emergency medevac. People really hurt bad. And that morning, they told us, they'll get us the medevac as soon as possible. So we had the AO working out, and they had a couple of flights of fixed wing on station. Fixed wing came out, and the AO started directing them. First flight of fixed wing that was out there, they didn't even hit the hotel. They didn't hit the hill at all. So the AO called in another flight, and they told us that they couldn't bring in the medevac birds until we secured the hotel. So we told us the AO, and the AO said he'll have flights of fixed wing out there all day if we needed them, till we got that hotel secured. So we kept having flight after flight of fixed wing. We had approximately 8, and they flattened the hotel, which there was approximately 15 to 20 enemy inside the hotel, which we had seen. And medevac birds wouldn't come in until we secured the hotel. So we got up a couple men, about 7 men, and we decided we'd make a sweep to the end of the hotel, see if it was secure. So on our way up, the man, Lance Corporal Galligan, they were making a sweep, and he saw one enemy running off. So he shot him, but he got away. And well, they made it completely to the end of the hill, and there were no more enemy up there. There was signs of a lot of bodies dragged off and a lot of blood trails, but there weren't any more enemy on the hill at the time. So we called in the medevac birds, and they postponed us again, saying that they wanted some airstrikes around the hill, and the birds wouldn't come in till they had them all the way around. So we had to wait for that, and then finally the medevac birds came, and along with the reactionary force, approximately 2 squads, reactionary force took our place on the hill. When the medevac birds came in, we got on the birds with them, CH-46s, and we were all off the hill, and then the reactionary force took care of the rest of it. While we were up there, we took 1 KIA, Lance Corporal Ray Humble. We took 3 WIAs, Lance Corporal Williams, Lance Corporal Allen, and PFC Cherry. After this had taken place, and secured the hill, we found 10 confirmed dead bodies, NVA, and we found numerous RPGs up there that hadn't been fired. There was an EOD team that was up there. They say it's one of the biggest things they ever had to clear. There were RPGs laying all over the place. There was numerous amount of Chi-Coms that didn't go off, and there were numerous ones that just didn't get a chance to be thrown. They had manufactured Chi-Coms, and they had homemade Chi-Coms. They had some made out of Coke cans, C-Rack cans, and numerous other things. Also, they found some Bangalore torpedoes in the wire, which they had planned to use, but apparently never had the chance to use. Also, the enemy had this attack planned for a long time by the looks of things, because when they hit the hill, they pulled all the claymore wires down the hill so we couldn't fire our claymores. And they'd probably been watching the hill for a very long time. We got hit by an estimated 2 NVA companies. They were under strength, but there was approximately 40 to 60 in each company. Also, we captured 4 AK-47 assault rifles and 1 RPG launcher. And like I say, we found a lot of blood trails leading off the hill under the wire where bodies had been dragged, and all the grass was broken down. So we imagine there was an innumerable amount of WIAs on their side and a lot of KIAs, but those are only probables.
Lance Corporal Weber, do you have any lessons learned on this OP?
Yes, I do. I think that before anyone goes up to an OP, they should definitely have a check on the ordnance that is up on the OP and the ordnance that you should take up. We ran into quite a difficulty up there because we asked for the ordnance check. We got the word down that they had about 4 or 5 cases of fragmentation grenades, plenty of HE for the 60 Mike mortar, and so they wouldn't let us take very much up there because they told us they had a lot up there. So when we got up there, we found a grand total of approximately 17 fragmentation grenades, and we took only about a case up there. So we didn't have very much fragmentation grenades. Also, we didn't have much mortar illumination, HE, Willie Peter. We didn't have any pop-ups up there, no hand illumination. But the only thing we had up there was gas and smoke. And when we got hit, we couldn't get to the ammo bunker because the RPG fire was so intense. And if these people would have realized what they were doing, as far as telling us that they had all that stuff up there and then throwing it the night before we come up, they ought to do something about that. And I think that if you request something, they ought to give you what you request for. Like a lot of times, you request to go up to some place you request for fragmentation grenades, you don't get them. They tell you they don't have them. Well, on something like this, we figured it was a secure hill. They wouldn't give it to us, so we didn't think too much of it. But it turned out not to be a very secure hill. It was really amazing how the enemy managed to get up that hill. We had quite a bit of concertina wire all the way around the hill there, and the enemy seemed like they knew the hill like it was the back of their hand. They had everything planned. They came up so close to us, we couldn't hear them. Approximately 5 minutes before we got attacked, we shot up an illumination. The people that were on post, they looked around, they couldn't see anything. Those enemies, they're real quiet. They can cut through that wire, and they'll never make a sound. Like I say, the Bangalore torpedoes, lucky they didn't get a chance to use them, but they were ready to. Also, we found one ladder, a homemade ladder out of trees, tree branches. They didn't get a chance to use that either. We were just lucky that people were alert. Everybody did an outstanding job. And the man in charge up there, Staff Sergeant Shoemaker, he was running around real calm under the fire, telling everybody where to go. He did an outstanding job. When we got hit, he was in the mortar pit, and he was putting out mortar rounds, which was an outstanding job because every time we'd put out a mortar, they'd be aiming for that mortar pit. They wanted it real bad, but they weren't afraid. They just kept putting out mortar rounds. And everyone up there did an outstanding job. Lance Corporal Allen, although hit, he ran through a barrage of RPGs to get to Lance Corporal Williams, and it didn't stop him at all. He got up there. Outstanding job. Also, one factor I forgot to mention, approximately our fourth day up on the hill, we decided we were going to run a patrol around this hotel on top of the hill. It used to be an old French resort built in 1920, and around it there were all kinds of cottages, small cottages. A lot of them were destroyed, some of them partially standing. We decided we were going to run a patrol out to one. We walked off the LZ to our north, and we ran a patrol, I'd say about 500 meters. We looked around, checked all the buildings, and we hadn't noticed anything out there. Didn't look like there was any movement or anything, and we set out trick flares out there, and trip flares didn't go off that night. So, like I say, those enemy really had that place planned out. They knew everything about it. They knew all the hiding places. We ran patrol out there. People that were up there before us ran a patrol out there, and they didn't see anything, and no signs of them whatsoever. Now, these enemy that were on top of the hill, that from what we've seen from the confirmed dead and what we've seen in the morning, the ones that we found on the wire, they were wearing vest-like jackets, which held satchel charges and chi-coms, and they wore either rolled-up trousers, they were khaki-like trousers, or black shorts. The trousers were rolled up to their high thighs, and the others were wearing shorts. Also, they wore leather straps around, or rubber straps around their ankles and their wrists and other parts of their body to cut off circulation. Now, the enemy does this so when they go through the wire, if they do cut themselves, they will hardly feel it. And it's been known that these zappers, they do that quite a bit, and just about every one of them had these bands around their bodies. Also, in the morning, when we had the AO out there, we ran to a bunker, we looked towards a hotel, and we took fire from AK-47s. We could see the enemy running around inside the hotel. A lot of them were wearing camouflaged utilities. Now, this is unusual. And of course, they were eating all our sea rations in the hotel. I imagine they were pretty low on chow, and they were really eating ours pretty much. Also, these NVA apparently were pretty high on narcotics. They found bags of opium and other presumable narcotics that they don't know what it is. And it was found up there. Those enemies, they must have been pretty high when they took that hill. They had to be. And we didn't see any hats that they were wearing, any hats or covers or helmets. We found a rain suit. One of them had a rain suit. Looked like a brand new poncho just about. And most of the equipment that they had was in unusually good condition. The RPGs that we found laying around were painted green. They had no rust on them whatsoever, hardly any rust. A lot of the Chi-Coms were in good condition, but a lot of them were duds. And the ones that were homemade, 99% of them were duds. Also, the RPG launcher appeared to be pretty new. The AKs, some of them seemed to be in good condition, but on the average, they looked to be in pretty good spirits, and they were a pretty strong bunch.
Thank you. This concludes our interview with Lance Corporal Albert G. Weber. It is being conducted with Corporal Donald L. Flynn, 2106303. Corporal Flynn is with Charlie Company, 1st Recon. Corporal Flynn is a team leader for 3rd Platoon, 1st Team. The interviewer is PFC Martinez, FC 2530561, member, 1st Marine Division Historical Team. Location of interview is Command Post Charlie Company, Da Nang, TAOR, Quang Nam Province, Republic of Vietnam. The date of the interview is 4 September 1969. Subject and security classification of interview is ground attack on OP Bana, and security classification is secret till downgraded by higher authorities. Corporal Flynn, could you tell me what you saw and did at OP Bana from 4 August 1969 through 12 August 1969?
Well, on the 4th of August, we went to an outpost on Bana for a radio relay team, for security for the radio relay up there. And the first week was there was no contact or sightings made. But the afternoon, about 3:30 of the 11th, we saw what appeared to be one gook walking through the remains of a building. We sent out a patrol, a 7-man patrol, went through our wire and over to the area where we saw this suspected enemy, and we searched the surrounding area. We heard him, what we thought was the person running through the undergrowth, but we couldn't see him or we couldn't catch him. We returned back to our positions and set up our a better watching what we had set up. We put 2 men on in each post instead of having 1 man on, and everything went real quiet the rest of the afternoon through the evening. We were still up about 12 that evening, and we had just posted the 1 o'clock radio watch, and I was making sure that all of the posts were being manned. I went back and laid down. This was about 1:45. At 1:05, I was awakened. I wasn't really asleep. I was more or less dozing. I was awakened by a grenade went off, and I got up and got my weapon and my magazines, and started out the door. I was the only one that wasn't outside. Someone had came in and gotten the Staff Sergeant Shoemaker and Sergeant Brunn. They were outside in the mortar pit setting up illumination. As I was going out the door, our first 3 RPG rounds hit the, I think was the north side of the hotel wall. The first round hit the wall, knocking a hole in it. The other 2 came through, hitting the communications bunker. The radio man at this time had picked up his rifle and his radio and was trying to make it out. The blast from the RPG rounds knocked him down and knocked his rifle from his hands. The only thing he picked up was the radio. He went outside and got in the mortar pit with the Staff Sergeant Shoemaker and immediately got calm and was letting them know that we were in contact. I went outside, also got in the mortar pit to get my orders from the senior man, and he told me to take 5 or 6 men, go down to the far wall and hold the wall. I then just picked 5 men at random and we started for the wall. At this time, Lance Corporal Humble said he was going to blow the claymores. The claymores were set up in a far bunker on a far wall. I called to him and told him to wait till we could get more men up there with him, but in all the confusion, I don't think he heard me. He went through the trench line around to the far side, and as he got to the bunker, was hit by RPG round, and he immediately went down. Our aide man, which was Lance Corporal Williams, was close behind him. He said that Humble was hit, and at this time I was moving through the trench line to the first bunker with a PFC Thomas, who had the 79. I told Williams to administer first aid, or to try to administer first aid. He was trying to reach the body when he was hit by RPG fragment, which landed about 5 foot from him in the trench. He was wounded in the chest and in the legs. I tried to rouse him, but he wouldn't answer. At first I thought he might be dead, and he was just rendered unconscious by the force of the explosion. He came to and said that Lance Corporal Humble had been killed, that he was wounded very badly in the chest and legs. I immediately called for Lance Corporal Allen, who was my aide man in my team. He was in the mortar pit. I told him to get his Unit 1 and come down. We had 2 wounded men. 2 men were wounded very badly. He had left his Unit 1 in the hotel. At this time, Lance Corporal Weber and Lance Corporal Allen both proceeded into the hotel to get the Unit 1. They got the Unit 1. Came back outside, and Lance Corporal Allen had to run across an open area of about 100 meters. At this time, all these RPG rounds and mortar rounds were falling in. He got to the trench line. I directed him where Lance Corporal Williams was laying and where the other fallen Marine was. He moved around through the trench line and had just arrived at Lance Corporal Williams' position when 2 Chi-Com grenades fell into the trench beside him, exploded, and an RPG round hit behind him. He was injured very badly in the back, in the legs, and in the back of the head. I moved myself and the grenadier to the bunker and immediately started marking rounds for the mortar. The mortarmen were dropping the mortar rounds in as I was directing them. We could hear the enemy coming through the wire, but we couldn't see them. We had ran out of illumination. We had no illumination. This time, an RPG round hit the bunker that I was standing on, the sandbags in front of me, but it failed to explode. And I moved the grenadier and myself off the bunker into the trench line. We moved back up through the trench line. We were moving the wounded through the trench line at this time. Lance Corporal Williams, who was wounded very badly in the chest, was making it under his own power, but Lance Corporal Allen seemed to be having very much difficulty crawling through the trench. I went to his side to try to help him, and it appeared to me that he didn't have any of his hips left, that they were completely blown away. So we, myself and two men, picked him up. We helped him through the trench line till he got to the edge of the mortar pit, and took him up in the mortar pit. At this time, you could see the enemy moving over the far sandbag walls. They were just coming over in groups of 5 and 6 at a time. We were firing, but we couldn't say for sure if we hit any that far down at this time. They come through to where the ammo bunker was and was taking up positions around the sandbag walls. And they were not exchanging small arms fire, which surprised us very much. They were mostly shotgun grenades and RPG rounds. They had quite a number of RPG rounds. It's mostly all they fired. We had pulled back to the mortar pit, and this time Staff Sergeant Shoemaker told myself and Sergeant Byrne and himself to act as a covering force for the other men and for them to help the wounded back to the LZ. The men immediately got the wounded and started moving back. As myself and Sergeant Shoemaker and Sergeant Byrne started pulling back to the LZ, we were going to the far right bunker on the LZ when we heard two different people calling to us. One bunker was hollering over here, the other bunker was hollering over here. And we started to go to the nearest bunker. This time, Lance Corporal Christensen stood up on his bunker and yelled that there was gooks in the other bunker. We immediately moved and ran across the other LZ. At this time, the enemy had moved up to the sandbag wall, which was on the edge of the LZ, and had opened up with small arms fire and RPG rounds. We moved into the trench lines and what was like a trash pit, but it didn't have any trash in it this time. It had been dug there beside the trench lines. We moved into here, put our wounded down, and immediately called for support. We had called for support, but we had been told that we could not get support at this time. We called again and asked for Spooky on station, and we were informed that there was no Spookies to be had. Finally, when we got the word that we were going to get support, it took 2 hours for the support to get to us, which was really not very good. When the support finally got on station, or just before that is, the support got on station, we had to use our M60 machine gun to mark our position because we did not have anything at this time to mark our position with. The spooky pilot came on station and told us to mark the hotel with tracer rounds of the M60 machine gun. At this time, when Staff Sergeant Shoemaker, when he was told by the pilot to mark the hotel position, he fired a burst of machine gun fire, but the spooky pilot did not see it. He told him to fire again. As soon as he opened up with his second burst, the bad guys behind the sandbag wall opened up with an RPG round, which landed about, I'd say, 5 feet from PFC Cherry. PFC Cherry took the after debris and shrapnel from the RPG round in the face, neck, and in the hands and arms. This time, Lance Corporal Thomas, as soon as the bad guy fired his RPG, stood up with his M79 and fired his M79 and got a direct hit, which killed the bad guy, which I think really done us a lot of help, because it put they had a new RPG launcher, and it put him out of action, so I think that really helped us a lot. Finally, the first spooky that was on station could not see us or could not see the hotel, and he left he did not give us any word that he was leaving. He just up and left. About 20 minutes later, we got another Shadow 47 on station. Shadow 47 told us to mark the hotel, and we told him that we couldn't mark the hotel. The only thing we had was an M60 machine gun. He said, mark the hotel with tracer rounds. So we fired again. And drawing fire once more from the enemy. We told the spooky to drop some flares from his flare ship. He dropped one flare and fired one burst of fire. This burst of fire was pretty close to our position, and he left. We got another spooky on station, and he done a very good, outstanding job. Then Shadow 47 came back, and he shot up our position. He thought he saw the bad guys, and he opened fire, and it was us, and it was just almost a miracle that no one was hit. And we were informed while Shadow 47, his second trip while he was there, that we would have support the next morning at daybreak. They would have a team come up and give us help, relieve us. The reactionaries would be there at daybreak to help us and bring up ammunition, which really made us feel good knowing that someone was going to come up to give us a hand. Our wounded did not have any, we did not have any morphine or anything to give our wounded for the pain, and had nothing. We only had about 7 bandages, which didn't even begin to cover up the wounds on the wounded's body. We started to administer first aid at this time when we had the time to administer first aid to the wounded. And at first we was going to administer first aid to Lance Corporal Allen because he looked the most serious to us. He was losing the most amount of blood. This time he refused medical aid until everyone else had been attended to. We put a bandage over Lance Corporal Williams' side, where he had shrapnel, had torn into his side and chest, and we put shrapnel on, put bandages on Lance Corporal Allen's hips and side and the back of his head. At this time, it was just beginning to get daylight, which we expected to really get hit hard by a ground attack with small arms fire, which did not come because Spooky was still on station. They sent us another Spooky, which was as getting daylight, they could really see the hotel, and he really done an outstanding job. He kept their heads down and really done a real good job. At this time, we received word from our 3 shop that we had to retake the hotel, that they would not send birds or no kind of gunbirds or trucks up here to give us support or to get a team in to relieve us unless the hill was secure, unless the hotel was taken back. Myself, Lance Corporal Charlie, and Lance Corporal Christensen was instructed by Staff Sergeant Shoemaker to move across the LZ to the far bunker, secure the bunker, and set up a security watch for about 20 minutes, watch the hotel. If we saw no movement, try to make our way to the mortar pit. We moved across to the bunker. We threw a M26 frag into the bunker, clearing the bunker. Went in checking, make sure that there was no bodies, or if there was bodies in there, they were dead. There was no one in the bunker. I set Lance Corporal Jolly around behind the bunker to cover our flank on the side of the hill. Lance Corporal Christensen behind the wall in front of the bunker to cover our front flank, right flank. And I stood up beside the bunker. I was observing the hotel. At this time, I could not see any movement in the hotel. I was watching a door when one of the bad guys walked up to the door and pulled the blanket which was hanging in the door aside and was looking out. I took a shot at him and missed, hit the side of the wall and scared him, and he moved over to a window. At this time, I could see what appeared to be 7 to 8 men moving around inside the building, grabbing rifles and gear and what have you. 3 men started out the back door of the hotel where the comm bunker was. I immediately opened fire. My first round hit a concrete post embankment, ricocheting off and hitting one man in the side. He turned and we opened fire and he went down. The other 2 were scattered around the side of the building into the sandbag walls on the other side. At this time we became engaged in what sounded like small arms fire from AK-47s from inside the hotel. You could see them muzzle flashes, and we were returning fire at the points from inside the hotel from where we were seeing the muzzle flashes from. At this time, Lance Corporal Jolly said that 5 of the enemy was moving their way around the hillside, trying to flank us on the flank. He opened fire and hitting 2 and scaring the rest of them, moving them around back in behind the other side of the hill. At this time, an AO, an Alpha Oscar, came on station, informed us that he had a flight of air coming in for us. He told us to get our heads down. We did not, 3 of us had no cover except one small fighting hole. We were all in the fighting hole, hoping that they would be on target. The first flight of Phantoms, they made 4 runs to the hill and never hit the hill, let alone the hotel. The first canisters of napalm they dropped went so close over the bunker that we were sitting behind that you could have reached up and grabbed them. We immediately high-alcoholed across the LZ into the trench line again and informed Staff Sergeant Shoemaker that the air support was way off, that they had no recognition of what they was trying to hit at all. They were just dropping their gear. He informed the AO of this. The AO immediately dismissed the Phantoms, told him to get off station to send him another flight of air. The next flight of air came. They didn't do the best job, but they done a pretty good job. The first Delta, well, I think it's Delta 124s, I think that's what they are, hit the northeastern wall of the hotel, dilapidating the northeastern wall. The second run, he dropped 3 and they went over the hill and hit in the valley The second phantom that came in dropped one, and he hit the western wall and collapsed the southwestern wall. The third run they made, they dropped napalm, the direct hit on the hotel, and we at this time we could see bad guys running out of the hotel with their uniforms and things on planes, and they were running over the side of the hill. We were taking shots at them when we could get our heads up from the flying debris. And at this time, we seen a gooner come out of the building, just casual, as if he was on a Sunday stroll. Looked to be what he was carrying, an M60 machine gun across his shoulder. And it startled us the way he was walking, just taking his time and just moving along. That we didn't realize at first that it was the bad guy until he was almost out of sight, and then we opened up, and we couldn't tell whether we hit him or not. The AO dismissed this flight of phantoms and brought in another flight, and they dropped the ordnance way short in the valley. The second run they came in, they dropped one, and we were sitting there watching it, and it was coming right for us. I mean, it was really dead on target, but we were the target. And the bomb struck the LZ about 50 meters from our position, and really shook us up, and we had to call that flight of phantoms off. They moved off, made a couple runs at the hotel, dropped the ordnance, and the rest of the ordnance was real good on target. The AO brought in another flight of phantoms and dropped their napalm and worked the hotel the rest of the way over. He brought in one more flight of phantoms just for the hotel, demolished the hotel. There was nothing but rubble left. And this time the AO spotted 3 50 caliber machine gun positions on the adjoining hillsides and knolls. He advised us of such, and that the bad guys were coming up the ridgeline again for another assault. We dispersed our men, getting as much room between each man as we could for this best coverage. And the AO called in another flight of phantoms and started working all over the ridge lines and the hillsides. The AO told us that not to worry, that as long as we needed air support, that we had it. All in all, they brought in 13 flights of Air Force, and really done an outstanding job. The only one that we thought was really terrible was the first flight, and they just dropped their stuff, and they didn't care where they dropped it. At this time, the Alpha Oscar advised us that that was all of our air, that we could go ahead and start securing the hotel. My team, myself, was Lance Corporal Jolly, who walks point, Lance Corporal Christensen, myself, moved out across the LZ, was followed up by Sergeant Brunn's team, and Sergeant Brunn and Sergeant Shoemaker. We moved out across the LZ, across the barbed wire and across the sandbag walls, into the rubble. At this time, we got word through our radio man that they had another flight of air coming in. We had to scramble back to the trench line to make sure that we got no more casualties. They worked the air flights on the ridge lines and around the hotel. This time the AO told us that that would be all the flights, that they wanted us to go ahead and secure the hill, and that after we secured the hill, they were going to run another flight of air on the adjoining knolls and hillside where they had saw all the movement in the 50 caliber positions. We moved up through the area again in through the rubble. We found one enemy body laying on the right-hand side in the rubble debris, and one was laying under the debris of the rocks where a large embankment had fallen on him. We moved around and secured the hotel area, checking under all rocks that had any possible hiding places. We moved on around to the trench line, checking all the bunkers and trench lines as we went. And one man, Lance Corporal Galligan, said he saw a bad guy crawling across the debris into the trash pit, the large trash pit we had. We surrounded the trash pit, threw a Willie Peter grenade into the trash pit, and declared that we did not find a body this time. We moved on around. This time we discovered Lance Corporal Humble's body. He had moved around to blow the claymores, as I said earlier in the tape. But even if he had made the bunker, it wouldn't have served much purpose, because after we got to checking the area out, after we had secured the hill, we found that the gooners had moved up to where the claymores were and had pulled the claymore wires and had pulled the firing devices out of the bunker down on the hillside. We also found our 60 Mike mortar that they had pulled out of the ammo of the mortar pit during the night and had carried it all the way back to the sandbag wall. It appeared, from what we could see, it appeared to be booby trap. They had all of their RPG rounds laying all around, and Chi-Com grenades and homemade booby traps and what have you. We secured the hill, carried the KIA back to the trench line, and informed the Alpha Oscar that the hill was secure. They could run his flight of air. He ran his flight on the adjoining knoll, the adjoining hillside, and as he was running it, the Phantom started taking fire from the 50s. The AO started working out, and they were taking fire. Every run they made over, they took fire. The AO brought in one more last flight of air and waxed the hillsides pretty good with it. Then he called us and told us that he was staying on station, that if we got in any trouble, to throw a red smoke in the direction of the enemy, and he would wax the area for us. We immediately called back to the street shop, informing them that the hill was secure, and at this time it was close to 9-10 o'clock, and we still had seen no sight of the support that we had been promised at daybreak. And we informed them that the hill was secure, to send us up to the birds. The birds, we waited and waited, and the birds didn't show. At about 1:30, we received word that the gunbirds were on their way with the trucks. That the only thing they had was the only thing they were bringing was the medevac birds to get our wounded. We had to hold the hill. This was pretty heartbreaking news, but we had set ourselves to do it. We had to do it. So when the birds came within radio contact distance, the gunbirds came up, asked for a zone brief for the enemy situation. We gave them the enemy situation, the best approach to our zone, the most likely positions that they would take fire from when they approached and while they were there, and which would be the best likely positions for the gunbirds to work on when the birds come in. This time we were informed by Lady Ace, who was the gunbirds, that he had two trucks. He had two trucks coming in carrying replacements, reactionary force, and a medevac bird. That all the wounded would have, in the KIA would be put on one bird, and half of the men on the hill would be put on one of the birds and half on the other. When the birds came in, the gunboat started working out on the hillside and immediately took small arms fire. The 46s landed and we put our wounded and our KIA on board, and I took my team and got on the first bird because Sergeant Brunn's team was covering the hotel area when the birds came in. We took off, and as we went over the hotel, where the hotel was standing, the area, the 46 took 50 caliber fire and small arms fire. And it took direct hits on the bird, but causing no damage and no casualties. And we got our medevacs and our KIA to the hospital, and that's just about it. The casualty situation was we had one friendly KIA, 3 friendly WIAs. We got 10 enemy confirmed KIAs with no probables. The in uniforms that the enemy were wearing, the one enemy KIA that was on the LZ, the one that walked up on the LZ security force, was wearing looked to be a pair of khaki shorts with a green utility shirt. He had his ankles bound from around his ankles and up around above his knees to where he could walk through the barbed wire and it wouldn't affect him. It has a numbing effect. That's the way the zappers bound themselves. He had what appeared to be magazine pouches. He had 9 magazine pouches strapped across his chest, but we weren't sure they were magazines. They could have been satchel charges of some sort, so we didn't mess with it. He was carrying an AK-47 modified assault weapon. It had the metal shoulder type thing that folded up on it. He had a banana clip, 2 banana clips taped together, and he was carrying brand new Chi-Com grenades strapped to his belt, and he was carrying homemade Chi-Com grenades. There were 3 enemy KIAs on the outside of the wire, laying in the wire. They had Bangalore torpedoes. They had Bangalore torpedoes made out of bamboo, which were estimated to be 4 to 5 foot long. The KIA directly across the LZ to the right in the rubble was wearing what appeared to be light brown or faded khakis, had a white armband around his arm. He was carrying an AK-47 with 1 magazine in the weapon, and he had 3 magazines on his person. He had a diary on his body, and what have you. On the KIA that was trapped under the rubble, we couldn't see no more than just the lower half of his body, but he had boots and he had green utilities on. The KIA that the 3 enemy that moved out of the hotel and the one that I shot was wearing camouflage utilities with soft jungle covers, and they were carrying AK-47s. The enemy that were at the north wall, the far sandbag wall, we couldn't tell because it looked where one of the big bombs had hit and blown him. He was just a mass of nothing, just blown up. There were enemy RPG launcher. There were RPG rounds, lots and lots of RPG rounds laying all over. There were brand new, looked to be commercial-made Chi-Com grenades all around, and homemade type. They had taken C-ration cans and made them, and taken large cans of peaches. When they were in the hotel, opened them up, ate the peaches, and they had packed them full of C4 and put a blasted cap in it, and was using this as a bomb.
Corporal Flynn, do you have any lessons learned from this OP?
Yes, I learned quite a few things from my experiences on Banal. The one experience is to have at least 2 men on watch at all times, and that you cannot see or hear the little sneaky ones coming. They are really good at this hiding in the shadows. Even when there's a flare hanging, they can really move through the shadows and you can't see them. Also, our resupply was very poor. Our support was more or less poor. When we asked for support, when we finally did get support, it was at least 2 hours getting there. And the first one we got just didn't do us worth of nothing. And the second one shot us up instead of the enemy. So, also to keep a lot of ordnance in the watch bunkers where you're going to stand your watches, not to have all your ordnance in your ammo bunker. Because if you lose your ammo bunker, you're in a hum. Also to well, I think the number of men we had was fairly well sufficient, but also for the OPs to be in range of arty, where you can get artillery support and artillery illumination, which Banal is out of range for arty support.
Thank you. This concludes our interview with Corporal Flynn.
Shoemaker, 2094041. Staff Sergeant Shoemaker is with Charlie Company, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. The interviewer is PFC Daniel A. Zarnecki, 2499541, a member of the 1st Marine Division Historical Team. The location of the interview is Charlie Company, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion CP, Da Nang, TAOR, Quang Nam Province, Republic of Vietnam. The date is 4th of September, 1969. The subject is a sapper attack launched against Romeo Relay Station located on top of Hill 1497. And the date of the attack was 13 August 1969. Security classification is secret until downgraded by higher authority. Sergeant, would you describe the activities of that night?
Yes, at about 1:25 on the morning of the 13th of August, we were providing security for Romeo Relay on Hill 1497 at grid coordinates 205704. We started taking RPG and mortar rounds from a small knoll to our east at grid coordinates 207702. The first thing I heard was people yelling for my security people wanting more illumination. I went out to investigate, and they had 3 zappers coming through the wire on the western end of the hill. I went to investigate, and we had
one confirmed body count, one enemy KIA that is, and at that exact time, the RPG started hitting the hotel on the eastern end of the hill. I went back and deployed my men in the trench line to the eastern end of the hill, and for about 30 minutes, we took RPGs steadily. So there's about 50 of them, I guess, came in. About 30 minutes later, they started coming through the wire. We were very low on illumination. We held them off for about 45 minutes after they started coming through the wire. And the RPGs and mortars were coming in, so we had to get away from the hotel because they was tearing the hotel apart on us, and it was beginning to crumble. We pulled back toward the LZ, toward the western end of the hill in the trench line. At that time, we were called for artillery or spooky or anything to get to us. We were told that they couldn't get any air cover to us, just to hold on. They would get spooky to us as soon as possible. Approximately 2.5 hours later, we had spooky come on station. The call sign was Shadow 47. It was very overcast. It was socked in. It was raining, and he couldn't see the hotel. So he was afraid to fire because he was afraid he would hit our friendly position. About an hour later, I guess it was, the overcast began to clear, and we got a different spooky on station, and he did a real good job for us and stopped the enemy's advance. At this time, the enemies had got up to within 30 meters of us and were shooting RPGs at us while we were in a trench line from right across the LZ. At first light, we had an AO come on station, and he started bringing in flights of fixed wing. It was then that we discovered on the hill that previously mentioned, the little knoll to our east at grid coordinates 207-702. The enemy had 3 50 cal positions dug in solidly on this hill. The last spooky on station started taking hits at first light from this 50 cal position, and the first 2 flights of fixed wing on the hotel also took fire from these positions. So the next 5 flights of fixed wing was ran on this knoll to wipe out these 50 cal positions. After these 50 cals were knocked out, or supposedly knocked out, they ran the rest of the flights on the hotel itself. Altogether, there was 13 flights of fixed wing ran, both on the hill of Benoit and on the knoll. At this time, after the fixed wing was over, we retook the hotel. We encountered small arms, but no more RPGs. At about 12:30 that following day, we resecured the hill, and the reactionary force was brought in to relieve us. At this time, we had AOs on station. Flights of fixed wing were on station, providing cover in case we needed it. As we came in, the reactionary force relieved us, and I took my wounded and my 1 KIA and was evacuated from the hill. At this time, we were still taking 50 cal rounds from the knoll to the east, and they ran more flights of fixed wing on these positions. Sergeant, would you describe a little bit what type of security is set up on the hill? Yes, there was 14 people on the hill with me, 18 people on the hill. And we had a 50% alert, 50% on watch at all times. This attack happened to come just at the time when the watches were changing, and everybody was awake except one radio operator at this time. We have as security, the LZ is secured by 2 people, and we have 2 roving patrols of 2 people around the hill. Would you describe the area itself, the top of the hill, and how exactly everything is arranged?
Yes. The hill itself is shaped it's a banana-shaped hill with the hotel sitting on the eastern end with the ammo bunker and trash that has fallen from the hotel, debris and rocks, piles of rubble from the hotel. And then on eastward, there's about 30 meters of barbed wire bunkers and rocks and debris from the hotel. And then we have an LZ, which is extends about 75 meters out from this rubble to the end of the hill, which is our LZ, and this is surrounded by bunkers and a trench line.
Getting back to the attack itself, could you give an estimate of the size of the enemy force, considering all the support they were receiving from the smaller knoll?
Yes. Upon debriefing, we was told that a captured enemy soldier had said there was 2 companies of regular NVAs was attacking Benoit. When it was happening, we didn't think there was quite this many up there, but we figured at least 50 or 60 men, but they told us later it was about 80. I think that's how many come on the hill. Then there was more remained on the knoll, and we found Bangalore torpedoes and Chi-Coms on the western side of the hill to indicate that there was more on the western side of the hill.
Could you describe a little bit about what the sappers were wearing, the ones that came through the wire, what they may have been carrying?
Yes, the bodies that we got on the hill, the 9 bodies, were NVA regulars. They had on green utilities. They were carrying AK-47 rifles, and there was several of the enemy weren't carrying any weapons at all. They were carrying packs full of RPG rounds.
Were they camouflaged in any way at all?
No, they were not.
Sergeant, how effective do you feel your air support was?
I feel, considering the weather conditions, the cloud cover, I think they did a real good job. I don't think if the weather had been better and the visibility better, it would have taken that many flights to do the job they did, but considering the weather, the rain, the clouds, and the fog, I think they did a real good job.
Could you give an estimate of the amount of damage done as a result of the attack?
Yes, the hill itself, the hotel was completely destroyed. It's just a pile of rubble. Bunkers were at that time were completely destroyed by napalm. Everything was just completely destroyed on the hill.
This is the result of air. I think you mentioned to me that you had to call air on your own position. Could you describe this a little bit?
Yes. There was all the bunkers and hotel was destroyed by air, except the one right on the LZ where we was, and I had my casualties in this bunker. And there was zappers in one bunker about 20 meters to our east while we were on the LZ, and we had to blow this bunker ourselves to clear it out from the enemy.
Sergeant, you mentioned that you had your casualties in your bunker with you. How many casualties did you take as a result of the attack, and would you describe the circumstances surrounding the injuries?
Yes. I had 1 KIA and 3 wounded. One of the wounded was not too serious. He got fragments from RPGs, and he's back now running patrols. The attack, when it first began, Lance Corporal Humble, one of my communicators, was in a bunker on the side of the hill where the attack came from, the RPG attack. he was making his way to the bunker into the trench line to blow the claymores. This is when they first started coming through the wire. Just as he reached the position where we had the claymores set up, an RPG hit the bunker and he was killed instantly. About 2 or 3 minutes later, I guess it was, another man, Williams, PFC Williams, was at that time my aide man. He was on his way at that time to see if he could help Humble in any way. Just as he reached the trench line, another RPG landed about 5 meters from him, and he was wounded very severely. Upon seeing this, Lance Corporal Allen, seeing him fall, grabbed the aid bag and went after him to render aid to him if he could and to see what he could do for Humble. At this time, another RPG hit the side of the hill and exploded, and Allen was very severely wounded. Upon having to pull back from the side of the hill we was on account of the RPGs coming in so heavy in the mortars, we took the wounded and all our casualties and moved back to the LZ. At this time, when Spooky came on station first, he couldn't see the hotel, so he had me mark the hotel with tracers from our M60 machine gun so he could see the hotel. I marked the hotel with the tracers, and the enemy pinpointed our position and started shooting RPG rounds at our position. The first RPG round came in, landed within 5 meters of the trench line with us, and the first burst scattered shrapnel around and wounded Lance Corporal Cherry. He was wounded in the face. He had fragments in his arms and legs and mostly in his face.
Sergeant, would you describe the avenue of approach used by the zappers who penetrated the wire?
Yes, there's actually one good avenue of approach on Bernal, and that is from the west end of the hill. There's a trail and a knoll running up to the barbed wire, and we used to go through the wires to check our trip flares and our claymores and all of our booby traps set out. Now this seemed like the best avenue of approach, so we had our 60 mortar registered in on this likely avenue of approach. We also had a machine gun set up to cover this avenue of approach. And that is where the first 3 zappers started to come to the wire, the initial contact we made. But the main force came to the opposite side of the hill from a position which is rather difficult to get up. They show us the harder way to get up instead of the likely avenue of approach. And the little knoll I spoke of earlier is on the opposite side of the hill from this likely avenue of approach. So the little knoll is the same height as Bernal, so they can shoot right across the 200-meter area right onto the Hotel of Bernal.
You mentioned claymores and booby traps. You have these set as early warning devices or ambush sets. Would you describe a little bit about these?
Yes, the hill is surrounded by trip wires. We have canisters of CS with trip wires set out as the flares are for early warning devices, and we have cans tied to the wire and all sorts of devices. And like I say, CS set out. The claymores are anti-personnel mines, so when they start coming to the wire, it's a very effective weapon.
Were they very effective in this particular attack?
No, they weren't. There wasn't any trip flares set off when they came through. The claymores on the side of the hill where the main force came through, as I stated before, was not blown on because the Humble was killed before you get to the claymores. But on the other side of the hill, we did have the claymores under control. We could have blown them at any time if the need would arise. But there was no trip flares tripped at the time, which leads us to believe that they had observed the hill before for quite some time.
Sergeant, what happened after you had been pushed down to the LZ?
After we had been pushed back to the LZ in a trench line by the enemy, we held them there until first light when we could get air cover and Spooky on station. Spooky kept them contained from advancing on us during the night with his flares and his guns. And this is what kept them from advancing on us during the night. Then at first light, like I said, we got the AO on station, and he ran his flights of fixed wing in. After the fixed wing, the word came to retake the hotel and secure the LZ for the reactionary force. At this time, we proceeded to secure the LZ and to retake the hill. We took very little small arms fire, very little resistance at all. I suppose there was retreating at this time after the airstrikes. We secured the hill, set up our security around the hill, and called for the reactionary force to come in.
Well, how many enemy KIAs were confirmed?
There were 10 enemy KIAs confirmed with small arms fire.
I understand that the next 3 nights, the relay station was also hit. Could you describe this a little bit?
Yes, I was taken off the hill, me and my people were, but the night that we got off, they were hit by RPGs and mortars, and the next 2 consecutive nights after that, I believe they were hit.
No sappers on next nights were actually found coming through the wire?
No, they were not reported come through the wire, although in the daytime they did take sniper fire.
Sergeant, are there any lessons learned from the attack that you could mention here?
Yes, there's a couple, I believe. Number one, it struck me as odd that they came up the most unlikely, that is, avenue of approach when they could have taken the easier one. And also that they had obviously observed the hill for quite some time and probably went over this very carefully before they actually went on with the attack.
Thank you. This concludes the interview with Staff Sergeant Louis L. Shoemaker.